I received the message in our family group chat on a Monday afternoon. My mother's words, polished yet steeped in formal disappointment, appeared on the screen like a verdict. Emergency family meeting, Thursday 7 p.m. We need to discuss Savannah's situation. My situation. That's how they referred to my decision to quit my job at the financial firm Fairmont & Lowe 2 years ago to start my own company. That's how they described my life's dream. Like it was a condition in need of treatment. I parked my Subaru Forester outside my parents' tile-roofed estate in Hartford, Connecticut. The kind of home where everything had to meet a standard. Ivy League degrees, major investors, family reputation. My car looked pitiful beside Dad's Audi and Mom's beige Lexus. I knew that's how they saw me now. I used to be the pride of the family. Now I was their cautionary tale over afternoon tea. I stayed in the car, staring at the oak door ahead. A text popped up from Tyler. My CFO. Bloomberg article goes live at 8 p.m. Ready? I replied, perfect timing. He sent back a wineglass emoji and a single word. Brutal. I checked myself in the rearview mirror. No designer coat, no luxury accessories. Just a white button-down under a worn black blazer. One mom once mocked as looking like it belonged to an unfinished college intern. My hair was pulled back neatly, makeup minimal. Let them think I was struggling. That made what was coming sweeter. The door opened before I could knock. My mother stood there in a fitted Chanel tweed dress, makeup perfectly layered, but unable to mask the tension in her face. You're late, Savannah. Only 2 minutes, Mom. In business, every minute counts. Something you might want to learn if you're still pursuing this company of yours. She said company like it was a joke. Inside, the living room was staged like a corporate boardroom. My father sat in his armchair by the fireplace, hands clasped across his stomach, wearing the look of a man about to negotiate a $100 million merger. My sister Madison sat cross-legged on the couch beside her husband, Chase, a man who lectured on entrepreneurship despite being fired from 3 companies. Aunt Cynthia, who rarely showed up for anything, was also there. Must be something dramatic. Savannah, Madison cooed, leaning in for a cheek kiss like she was performing in a stage play. Loving the vintage vibe. Zara? Thrift store, very eco-conscious. She laughed awkwardly, but I caught the flash of horror in her eyes. My father cleared his throat, the sound like a starting bell. We're here because we want to help you, Savannah. The current situation is concerning. I chose the hardest chair in the room and sat, facing all of them. I wanted them to see my face, unblinking. You mean my business? I asked evenly. Your impractical choices, my mother cut in. 2 years ago, you had everything. A management track at Fairmont, a 6-figure salary, a luxury apartment in Boston, and Ethan. Ethan, my ex-boyfriend, whom they practically planned to marry me off to. I left all of it behind to found Linex Analytics, a software company focused on healthcare data systems. And to them, that was career suicide. And now, my dad added, a tiny apartment, a beat-up car, and working past midnight for a company no one here even understands. Calling it a startup is generous, Chase chimed in. The market's saturated, you'd need serious capital, which you don't have. I pressed my lips together, stifling a smile. He didn't know my company had rejected his investment pitch just weeks ago. And he still hadn't figured it out. We just want what's best for you, Madison added, in a voice that sounded like a vitamin ad. There's no shame in admitting something's not working. Mom said Fairmont would take you back. Mom's friend's daughter just became CFO there, Aunt Cynthia said proudly. Youngest in company history. Could have been you. I glanced at my watch. 7:44 p.m., 16 minutes to go. No one's asked what my company actually does, I said. You've all just judged me by the car I drive and the clothes I wear. Dad stood up, launching into his urgent solution plan. The room was ready to lay out a roadmap for reintegration, back to what they called the right path. I said nothing, I hadn't even had a full minute to sit down before my mother dragged a chair closer, setting her wineglass on the table like she was about to preside over a trial. "You've had 2 years, Savannah, but you need to hear this clearly. This isn't some phase of self-discovery anymore. This is a downward spiral." My father clasped his hands and leaned back, as if preparing to deliver a shareholder rebuttal. "When you walked away from your position at Fairmont, your mother asked me to have faith in you. She said you needed time. But look at you now. 29, still unsettled, no marriage, no children, no real home. Just an idea on paper. I've never seen a business plan from you," he added, eyes still on his glass. "You've been evasive, like you're hiding something." Madison, still sitting with her legs elegantly crossed like a magazine spread, chimed in. "Remember our last night in that Newbury Street apartment? I cried because I thought you were throwing it all away. I truly believed you'd come back. You and Ethan were perfect together." I turned to look at her. Not a wrinkle on her face, sparkling white teeth and eyes that glimmered. Though not from emotion, but from colored contact lenses. "Ethan didn't believe in women leading anything," I replied flatly. "And now you're not leading anything?" Chase interjected, leaning forward. "A company with no LinkedIn presence, no office address, no public website. You really think anyone takes that seriously?" I almost laughed. "No public website? Because we're under NDA with 3 of the largest healthcare conglomerates on the East Coast. But why bother explaining that to a man who once described blockchain as an app for concert tickets?" Cynthia adjusted her scarf, her tone syrupy sweet but colder than any boardroom air conditioning. "Your parents sacrificed a lot to give you a proper education. They don't deserve to be in this position. When people ask what Savannah's doing now, your mother has to pretend she didn't hear them. You think that's pleasant?" I looked directly at her. "It's not pleasant, but it's not worse than being treated like a failure, just because I didn't follow a path someone else laid out." Madison sighed dramatically. "You know what? Chase was just asked to consult for a health tech venture fund. Maybe you should talk to them. They might find a place for your idea." "I'm not looking for a place," I said, my voice dropping. "I'm building one." No one responded. They thought I was being petulant. My father cleared his throat again. "Fairmont still keeps in touch with me. They said you were one of their most promising hires. They'd take you back, maybe not right away. But I can arrange a call. There's no shame in starting over." "I don't need to start over," I said, eyes fixed on the clock. 7:53 p.m. My mother snapped, turning to face me. "Then what do you call this? Living in a 1-bedroom in East Cambridge, working 16-hour days? No stable health insurance? No retirement plan? Is that what you call success?" I stayed silent. Chase shook his head and pulled out his phone. "Want to see the company I'm consulting for? They've got an AI health data platform, website, PR team, a legit logo. Not whatever shadowy thing you're doing." He scrolled and shoved the screen toward me. I glanced at it. "A company launched 2 months ago, with a logo suspiciously similar to one of our unreleased internal prototypes. 7:50 p.m. "Savannah," Aunt Cynthia leaned in. "You should think of your mother. She cried all night because you won't say anything about your job. She's terrified of what people are saying. Do you know what they're saying?" "No." "And I don't care," I said, calm but firm. "Ungrateful," Madison muttered. I turned to her. "Silence isn't ingratitude, it's self-preservation." Madison's phone buzzed with a notification. A moment later, Chase's did too. "Babe, have you seen this?" he asked, his voice dropping. I pressed my lips together. 8 o'clock. My mother's voice still carried sharpness. "So what exactly does this mystery company of yours even do? Or is it all just smoke?" I stood, slowly pulling my iPad from my bag and placed it on the oak table. A small gesture, yet enough to draw every eye in the room. I hadn't even touched the iPad when Madison's phone started buzzing non-stop. She glanced down, ready to swipe it away like usual, but suddenly froze. "Whatever it is, Is this? She muttered. Her skeptical expression quickly twisted into disbelief. Chase leaned over, snatched the phone from her hand. His jaw clenched, his face turned red. My mother furrowed her brow, craning over the table to see. What's going on? She snapped. I kept my face neutral, opened the iPad, and tapped straight to the newly published Bloomberg Business Tech headline. In bold letters, the woman behind the healthcare data revolution, Savannah Blake, 29, takes Linux to a $2,400,000,000 0 cents valuation. Below it was my portrait, taken at my Cambridge office. Soft daylight through the glass windows. Behind me, whiteboards filled with algorithms and a national hospital network map. Chase's voice was tight. This is real? It's my company, I said. Nothing more, nothing less. My mother's hands trembled as she nearly knocked over her wine glass. My father stood abruptly, circled the table, and stared at the iPad like he might find a typo. But every line was clear. Unmistakable. Savannah Blake, founder and CEO of Linux, is behind the confidential healthcare data platform recently approved by the FDA, currently integrated in over 180 hospitals across the U.S. Confirmed by Forbes, Savannah Blake joins the 30 under 30 in tech for building an AI network that analyzes chronic disease recurrence risks. My father swallowed hard, voice hoarse. $2.4 billion? Estimated after last quarter's funding round. It might be higher now, I said, eyes fixed on their stunned faces. Madison stammered. Why didn't you say anything? I shrugged. No one asked. But you live in that tiny apartment. You drive a beat-up car. Because I don't have to prove anything. And I know exactly where my value comes from. It's not the car or the zip code. My mother still hadn't spoken. She was now reading every word of the article, eyes scanning to the final lines. Blake maintained complete operational secrecy for nearly 2 years, refusing all interviews until federal medical certification was obtained. Bloomberg confirms she rejected 3 acquisition offers, each worth over $1 billion. She looked up, her voice faltering. You turned down $1 billion? 3 times, I said. Because what I'm building isn't meant to be sold off for quick fame. I'm redefining how healthcare data is managed in this country. Chase stood up so fast it looked like I'd admitted to espionage. Madison clutched her mouth. My father slumped in his chair, his whole body deflated. Aunt Cynthia let out a soft gasp. Oh my God. I flipped the iPad to the next screen. An interactive map of all hospitals under contract with Linux. A dense network of green dots covered more than half the country. These are the places using our technology. And this, I pointed to the lower right corner logo, this is why Chase didn't get funding. That firm? It's my subsidiary. I acquired it 6 months ago. Chase went pale. Madison collapsed into her seat like the oxygen had been sucked from the room. I looked at my parents. 2 people who'd believed that Ivy League degrees and 6-figure salaries defined worth. Now, that definition sat across from them, needing no permission to exist. The blazer I'm wearing, I adjusted the lapel slightly. Yes, it's from a thrift store. But it'll be on a magazine cover next week. They're writing about female leaders who ignore superficial signals. No one said a word, the silence was unnerving. Just then, my mother's phone rang. She jumped, glanced at the screen, and sighed. It's Mrs. Harrison. She sent the article with the message, "Is this your daughter?" I stood, picked up my iPad. Now that you all know what my company actually does, I'll be heading out. I have a Zoom meeting with the FDA's executive director in 10 minutes. I walked toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Madison? The reason my company rejected Chase's pitch wasn't because of a bad business model. It was because the ethics didn't meet our standards. I turned back to look at my family one last time before leaving the room. The same room where they once gathered to rescue me. You always ask why I don't share, I began, my voice steady, not angry, but sharp as a blade through the silence. But none of you ever really wanted to listen. My mother pressed her lips tight. My father stood still, gaze drifting, like he was trying to reclaim control of a meeting that had slipped away. For the past 2 years, what did I get? Calls asking when I'd wake up, texts suggesting I consider real jobs, and questions like, "Are you sure you don't need help?" I stepped forward, iPad still firm in my hand. I didn't stay silent because I was ashamed. I stayed quiet to work in peace. Because I knew, if I failed, you'd say, "We told you so." And if I succeeded, it would be, "Why didn't you tell us sooner?" Aunt Cynthia shifted, glanced at my mother, about to speak. I raised my hand gently. "No need. Do you remember the last time you checked in on me, Aunt Cynthia? It was at Madison's wedding. You asked, 'Still playing with those tech toys?' and laughed like it was a joke." I turned to Madison, still dazed. "You stood in the middle of that reception and mocked me for living in a 1-bedroom apartment. That same night, while you flaunted a $6,000 Chanel bag, I was negotiating a data contract with the Army." She opened her mouth, but I didn't give her the chance. "And Chase," I said, turning to him. "You emailed a fund called Helix Ventures, claiming to have a personal connection with the LineX team. Unfortunately, the person who read that email was my CFO. Tyler forwarded to me and asked one thing. Who is this guy?" Chase flushed, lips pressed thin, but said nothing. "Remember that tech summit in Baltimore?" I continued. "You came with Madison, sat in the front row, and loudly dismissed one of the presentations as lacking vision? That was our first internal demo of LineX Core. I was 2 rows behind you. I heard every word." My father furrowed his brow. "You make it sound like you were hiding from us." I turned to him, voice calm. "No one ever asked what I was building. You only cared whether I was doing something that fit the family's definition of success, a definition built entirely on salaries and LinkedIn titles." The air thickened. I exhaled slowly and set the iPad back on the table. I used to think that once I succeeded, you'd see me differently. But now I realize, you never really saw me. You only saw the version of failure you imagined and projected it onto me. My mother stood abruptly. "Is that how you see this family? We just wanted what's best for you. We were worried." "Mom," I said, eyes locked on hers. "You called this meeting because you believed I needed saving. But none of you invited me when LineX signed its first contract. No one said congratulations when we got FDA approval." I looked at each of them. One by one. No one argued back, not anymore. I chose to live modestly not because I'm broke, but because I'm focused. That old car? Easy to fix. The apartment? It's the smallest unit in a building I own. I don't brag because I don't need applause. I bent down, picked up my bag and stood tall. The most painful thing isn't being doubted. It's being defined by the eyes of people who should have believed in you. Over the past 2 years, I've learned this. No one can erode your confidence more easily than your own family. I walked toward the living room door, but paused at the threshold. "But don't worry," I added, turning back with a quiet smile. "Next time someone asks, 'What's Savannah's family like?' I won't hesitate anymore. Because now, I know the answer very clearly." And with that, I walked out of that house. The house that once saw me as the wayward daughter. And stepped into the cool night air. Feeling like I had finally shed a skin that no longer belonged to me. Less than an hour after I left that house, my phone lit up like a switchboard. The first message was from my mother. "Savannah, sweetheart. I'm sorry if I ever hurt you. We were just worried. Can you come home for dinner this weekend?" Then came a string of texts from Madison. "Sis? I honestly had no idea. I'm in shock. But I'm really proud of you. Can we FaceTime? I wanted to ask your advice on a few investment ideas." I didn't respond. But they didn't stop. My father texted. "The article was incredible. Your mother's been emotional all day. If you're free, I'd love to invite you to an upcoming conference. A lot of people are eager to connect with founders like you. I sat alone in the warm glow of my living room, watching the rain tap softly against the Boston window panes. Each drop like an apology that had arrived too late. Chase sent a one-line email. I misjudged you. If there's ever a chance, I'd love to explore a collaboration with Linux. And then came Madison's full-length monologue of a message. I've been thinking, maybe we could do something together? I've got great contacts in fashion. Who knows? Maybe Linux could do something with customer trend analytics? You once said data is gold, right? I couldn't help but laugh. Half tired, half amused. She'd never listened to me talk about my work for more than 3 sentences. Now, she was quoting me to climb back up a ladder she'd once kicked out from under me. The next morning, when I walked into Linux HQ, Claire was already waiting by the elevator. Savannah, we've got a flood of messages in the company inbox. Some media, but one in particular, from your mom. Still using the pink floral Gmail address? Still. Leave it, I'm not responding. Claire nodded without pressing. She understood me better than the people I'd lived with for 2 decades. By 9 a.m., I was in a strategy meeting, presenting our AI pipeline for real-time medical case analysis. Midway through, my phone buzzed lightly. A message from Dad. Dinner tonight? Your mom's making that chicken soup you love. We won't talk business, just family. Just family. It sounded like a vow, but one delivered after they had already built a stage to exile me from. I didn't reply. By noon, Madison had posted on LinkedIn, tagging me. So proud to have a sister like Savannah, strong, brilliant, and always fighting quietly for success. My family has always believed in her, even if we didn't always say it out loud. Family pride. Female leadership. The post went viral with hundreds of likes and congratulatory comments. A few asked, since when was she Savannah's sister? I said nothing. PR emailed to ask if I wanted to issue a statement. I replied, no need, they're just borrowing my light now that it's warm. I don't owe them the fire. That afternoon I sat alone in my glass office on the 34th floor, watching the traffic weave like veins across the city. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Mom. You might still be angry with me, Savannah. But I've always been proud of you. When you left Fairmont, I cried all night. Not out of disappointment, but fear. Afraid the world might hurt you. I read the last line slowly. Now I see you're stronger than I ever imagined. Please, give me another chance. I set the phone down. I didn't delete it. I didn't answer either, just let it sit. Because what they didn't understand was this. I didn't get here because of their applause. I got here because I learned to walk without needing it. I used to wish they'd recognize my efforts. Now, I just wish they'd understand one truth. Saying sorry doesn't reset the clock. I'm no longer the daughter seeking approval. That version of me no longer exists. 1 month after the article went public, when the media had finally begun easing their grip on every move I made, my father showed up unexpectedly in the main lobby of the Linux building. No Mercedes, no sharp blazer, no navy tie like the ones he always wore at board meetings. Instead, he was dressed in a worn chambray shirt, jeans, and old sneakers. In his hand was a scuffed brown leather briefcase. One I hadn't seen since elementary school. Claire walked into my office and tapped lightly on the glass door frame. Savannah. Richard Blake is downstairs. No appointment. I looked up. My heart didn't race. It simply settled. Did he say anything? Not much. Just said, I'm not here to ask for anything, I just want to understand. I paused, then nodded. Bring him up, no formalities, no escort, no announcement, let him walk in like anyone else. Claire nodded and disappeared behind the soft click of the closing door. 10 minutes later my father walked in. No one introduced him. No greetings with firm handshakes or rehearsed lines. Just a gaze. One I hadn't seen in years. Not one of power, but of quiet surrender. "Hello, Savannah. Please, have a seat," I said, pointing to the chair across from mine. He didn't sit right away. His eyes scanned the room. Whiteboards covered in dense algorithms. Live dashboards from 42 linked hospital systems. Soft daylight streaming through the windows of the 34th floor. Finally, he sat, laying the old briefcase on his lap, and carefully unbuckled it. "These past few weeks I've been reading, more than I've read in my entire career." I tilted my head. "About what?" "AI, deep learning, healthcare data processing protocols, FDA 5.10Q, Linux's core framework. I even tracked down your sophomore research paper, Predictive Patterns in Pediatric Oncology." I stayed quiet. He pulled out a thick binder, hand-labeled with black marker. Savannah/Linux/Core Concepts. I printed every article, every demo report, every trade feature. I took notes in the margins like you were my professor. Because I realized I had no idea what you'd been doing all this time. I only judged it through what I thought was right. I let out a faint laugh. Not because it was funny. "So, what do you think now?" He removed his glasses, wiping them gently with a folded handkerchief. "I think I was wrong. Not because I underestimated you, but because I never considered that you might be right. In your own way." Silence lingered. I stood and walked to the whiteboard, picking up a marker. "You really want to understand?" He nodded. Quickly, no pride this time. I drew a simple flowchart. "This is Linux's machine learning model. It doesn't just analyze data, it learns from clinical outcomes, treatment progressions, patient behavior, and pharmaceutical logistics. We don't just respond, we predict and intervene early." He got up and walked closer. "Is it accurate?" Over an 18-month validation period, our lung cancer recurrence prediction model reached 97.8% accuracy. For other conditions, the lowest was 92.1%. I turned to him, and for the first time, saw focused curiosity in the man who once taught me how to build spreadsheets in 5th grade. "You want to know why I worked in silence?" I said, more softly, not because I was hiding, but because I knew if I spoke too soon, everyone would try to fix me. He nodded slowly. "I've spent my life fixing things, but I've never built something like this." I walked back to my desk, pulled out a performance report and handed it to him. "This contains the results from 3 pilot models deployed in hospitals in Chicago, Austin, and Seattle. If you really want to understand, start here." He took the binder, flipped through a few pages, then looked up. "The last thing, I know I have no right to ask, but if there's a chance, I'd like to hear more from you. Not to critique, just to listen. This time, really listen." He didn't speak. Then I nodded. Not because he was my father, but because, finally, he was doing something no one in my family had ever done before. He was learning how to understand me in my own language. There were no tears, no hugs. Just a man walking out of my office with a thick stack of notes in his hand, and a look in his eyes that, for the first time, held genuine respect for the daughter he once called a dreamer without direction. 4 days after the meeting with my father, I received an email from my mother. The subject line read, "Well, dinner, no judgment, no lectures." The message was brief. "Savannah, I know this may be too late, but if you're open to it, I'd like the whole family to sit down together, just once. Not to tell you what to do, but to actually listen. Your father says this time, you're in charge." I leaned back in my chair, staring down at the streets below the Linux tower. A light drizzle. Not quite the old season, but not fully the new. I didn't reply right away. Instead, I texted Claire. "Prep the Omega room. Dinner for 10. No flowers, no candles. Standard white lights. Set up a large projector. Friday night." She messaged back instantly. "Family?" "Yes. But not the family they remember." At exactly 6:58 p.m. on Friday, the elevator doors opened, and there they were. My mother wore a muted gray moule dress, hair pinned back neatly but not stiff. Madison had on a soft cashmere sweater, no sequins, no Dior. Aunt Cynthia carried a bag of homemade pastries. My father stood in the center, in a plain brown coat, calm expression, the usual corporate sharpness stripped away. I greeted them in the lobby, no receptionist, no show. "Evening, everyone. Dinner's on the 35th floor, but there's something I'd like to show you first." I led them down the corridor to the Omega Room, the same space we used for system demos with CDC and Department of Health reps. This is where Linux presents our AI model to top medical agencies. I turned on the projector. A real-time data graph filled the screen, showing how our system tracked and predicted patient risk metrics. This is why I couldn't leave early for dinner. Every second, our system is identifying stroke risks, heart failure warnings, and adverse drug reactions before doctors even open the charts. Madison's eyes widened. My mother sank into a chair, clutching her purse. "And the apartment I live in?" I continued. "It's the smallest unit in a building where Linux owns 40% equity." "The car I drive?" "A smart tax deduction." The reason I kept silent? So no one would interfere while I was still shaping the dream. Silence. I turned off the screen. "If after all this you still want dinner, follow me." We entered a separate room. A long table, simple chairs, no tablecloth, just soft electric candles, and a preset menu from a local Italian spot. I spoke before anyone else could. "Most conditions, Chase isn't invited. People who used my name for personal gain don't have a seat here." Madison froze, but didn't argue. She sat quietly. "And if anyone here asks when I plan to settle down or start a family, I'm leaving. This isn't a trial or an intervention. This dinner is about seeing me as I am." My mother exhaled, not a sigh of frustration but of release. "All right. I won't ask anything. I just want to eat beside you like a normal person. Not a walking resume the family designed." I looked at her. Part of me wanted to believe her. Part of me didn't. But I nodded. Throughout the meal, no one mentioned stocks, job titles, or income. Aunt Cynthia talked about gardening. Madison asked about algorithms, without pretending to understand them. My father said he'd started taking online Python courses to understand how his daughter talks to machines. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was performing. I was just Savannah. Not the CEO, not the eccentric daughter, but a woman who had built an empire through quiet focus and relentless work. As the evening ended, there were no dramatic hugs, no forced closeness. My mother simply said, "If you host another dinner, I'll bring that roast you loved as a child, but if not, I'll understand." I looked at her, then replied slowly, "Next time, if there is one, just bring respect." And for the first time in my life, she nodded without needing to say anything else. One week after the family dinner at Linux, I asked Claire to order a special frame, anti-glare glass, matte black edges, 11 by 14 inches. Not for an award, not for some glossy certificate, but to hold a photo I had kept for 20 years. It was a picture of me at the 5th grade science fair. A scruffy-haired girl with an uneven ponytail stood next to a presentation board, scribbled with the title, "Weather Forecasting Using a Simple Neural Network." The child wasn't looking at the camera. She was mid-explanation, finger pointed to a hand-drawn chart in green marker, mouth open mid-sentence. No one from my family came that day. Dad had a meeting. Mom said the car broke down. I carried the board myself, set up the projector alone, arranged the charts without help, and I remember it vividly, not with sadness, but with joy. Now, that photo hangs on the wall directly behind my desk. To the left is a real-time map of healthcare systems powered by Linux. To the right, our stock performance graph. But at the center, there's that little girl they once called too dreamy to be practical. One morning, while waiting to join a video call with Singapore, I found myself staring at the photo. Not out of nostalgia, but as a reminder. That child is the foundation, the beginning, the promise. Mid-thought, my phone buzzed. A text from Madison. Chase is under investigation for falsifying investment disclosures. I'm sorry, I should have trusted you sooner. I need some advice, if you're still open to speaking. I looked at the message, then placed my phone face down on the desk. I didn't respond. An hour later, my mom called. Her 6th call in 3 days. I didn't answer, but I sent a single text. I hope you're doing well, but from now on, if it involves work or money, I won't engage. Family should not be entangled with control. And love is not a switch to be flipped when a daughter becomes successful. I hit send, then turned off my phone. Not out of anger, but because I had learned something. Clarity is the kindest thing I can offer, to myself and to them. That afternoon, during the board meeting, one of our longtime investors, Mr. Daniels, asked me, "Savannah, have you ever thought about writing a memoir? Your story, it deserves to be told." I laughed. If I ever write one, there won't be a chapter called Saved by Family. Because the truth is, I wasn't raised on belief. I was forged through doubt. Everyone chuckled, the air lightened. I continued. And I know this might sound harsh, but success doesn't come from being recognized. It comes from continuing. Even when no one believes, you'll get anywhere. After the meeting, I returned to my office and glanced at the photo again. From the drawer, I pulled out a crumpled napkin. Faded ink along the edge, part of the first draft sketch of what would become the Linux core. I had drawn it on a cafe table when I was 25. I placed it in a smaller frame and hung it next to the science fair photo. 2 beginnings. No applause. No praise. But one constant, me. And I knew, no matter how many family dinners ended in apologies, no matter how many flattering posts appeared online, the reason I stood here wasn't external approval. It was the boundary I built, and the promise that I wouldn't let anyone cross it again. I am Savannah Blake. I am the founder of Linux. And I built an entire world from a girl they said didn't fit. Only now, the world will have to learn to fit me. Savannah's story proves that validation doesn't need to come from family or society. It comes from inner conviction and firm boundaries. In real life, not everyone has a support system. But if you believe in your own worth, work quietly, and refuse to let others define your path, success won't need defending, it will speak for itself. Savannah didn't need approval, she just needed space, and that was enough to rewrite the rules. What do you think about Savannah's choices and the journey she took? Would you have done the same in her place? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful stories about family and resilience.